Welcome to the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights, where law and AI collide. Get ready to level up your legal game with us. We've got career advice, cutting edge developments, mind blowing legal tech, and more. Know someone making waves in the legal AI world? Nominate them, or even nominate yourself. We love courageous souls. And don't forget, we want to hear from you too. Ask questions, drop comments. Let's build a community of legal superheroes. But here's the deal. We're all about to have a blast. AI may be serious, but we're here to make it fun. So buckle up, get ready to power up, and let's embark on this exciting journey together. Now, let's introduce your fearless host, Olga Mack. Get ready to dive into the awesomeness of Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self AI edition. I am really excited about today's conversation. It's someone I like, admire, and love to watch because I would love to see her succeed and change the future of law for the better. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Jackie. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. So excited to have you. I can't wait to have this conversation. I consider you both a friend and a colleague and somebody I admire. A lot of people have seen you on social media, conferences, and legal tech circuit just generally. But for those who didn't or don't know who you are, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ola, and it's such an honor to be here. I admire you so much. I'm Jackie. I'm the founder and CEO of Clearbrief, and I am an old school career litigator. I started out at Paul Weiss in New York as a litigation associate, but I spent most of my career in government as an assistant attorney general in Alaska and Washington State. I'm based in Seattle now. And I was also in-house counsel for several years before I launched Clearbrief in 2020. I took the leap to found a company. Before I think AI was cool, it definitely was not very popular at the time with investors and that sort of thing in the way that it is now. So we've been working on this problem for years, and I'm so proud that Clearbrief is now used by hundreds of law firms across the country, and we're also used by courts and government agencies, and we're starting to be used internationally by major law firms as well as in-house counsel that work on litigations. I'm really excited for this conversation. There's a lot to chat about.
Well, I think you have some fans in the house. Cassie is there and Maria. They're all excited saying hello. You have some fangirls out there. I am one of them. So let's So yeah, you're among friends. You're definitely among friends here. Jackie, for those folks who don't know what Clearbrief is, what is it? What does it do? And how does it enhance people's lives?
Clearbrief is a Microsoft Word add-in. So that part's very important because as litigators, we're spending our days in Word drafting things. And what it does is it will split your screen, right? So that as you're writing, it will suggest specific pages from across all the discovery. We integrate with like relativity and your case management systems so that you can bring in your source documents really easily. And it also will instantly generate a hyperlinked timeline for you so that you could see all of the dates and a chronology from across all of your documents, a summary of what happened. And then this is the important part, a link that shows you where that information came from with that, even that text highlighted on the right-hand side of your screen in Word, so that it's so easy for you to turn a jumble of documents into something that's immediately useful for litigation. And then because the AI is being used at that early stage of the writing process, you can now take it all the way through site checking. We partner with Fastcase so that you can see the underlying law, and you can verify every single statement in your document. You can do an instant table of authorities, and then at the end, you can share a hyperlinked secure version of your brief, your motion, your pleading, your chronology with the court. A lot of our users actually file their hyperlinked clear briefs with the court. And you can also share it with your client. So it's a journey, but it's really practical and tied to what litigators are doing every day.
It solves a real problem. And by the way, you have now Jerry saying hello. So there's a few folks who are joining. I encourage folks to ask questions. By the way, also feel free to suggest amazing folks like Jackie to talk about AI or anything helpful to the especially in-house community, because we do a separate podcast on that. I definitely want to talk about AI because the whole point of this is AI. But I do want to talk a little bit about your journey. You mentioned a couple of things that you've done everything from law firm to in-house to government. I think there's, other than nonprofits, what else is there? So
I did. I was in-house at a nonprofit, a $3 billion.
there you go. There you go. Too. Maybe building on that summary, how does one get up in the morning and have a courage and audacity to say, today I'm going to start building an AI company before it was cool?
I don't think it was just like one day. It's definitely a lot of little steps that sort of gave me the conviction that this made sense to do. But I'll say it started from, and this is something that guides me today through every single aspect of our product, is talking with users on the ground. That is so important. So I had my own experience to draw from of just being so stressed out and scrambling when filing litigation documents and briefs and motions, to be able to view that evidence, to figure out if I made any mistakes before I filed something. And I had a really formative experience as well when I was doing a pro bono case. This was like shortly before I founded the company, where I walked into that final asylum hearing, and the judge was just like very visibly frustrated, biased, a little bit rude to my client. And I thought, okay, we're going to lose. But there was a moment where I pointed the judge to some underlying evidence that I had mentioned in my brief. And he was really getting into that underlying evidence about what the therapist said. And he changed his mind. And I saw him believe my client, or at least believe the expert testimony. And we won. When he granted my client asylum, it was a huge moment for her and for me professionally, just realizing, wow, this really made a difference, being able to show that evidence. And it was paper that I happened to have like in the courtroom, but that was my vision that inspired me, that there's a better way that we can deliver the underlying evidence, not only to the people while they're writing it, but to the judge. Make it easy for them to believe and trust in your writing. I started learning about AI. I wrote a law review article that was published in 2020 called Harnessing AI for Struggling Families. Be one of the 20 people who actually read it, please. But that, even in going through that process, I got really like nerdy into learning about what was possible with AI in the private sector. And by the end of that, I was like, I think that this could be applied to the law. And so just step by step, I started the company, and here we are.
I love it. First of all, as someone who actually done a few dozens actually of asylum cases, those are the most impactful cases, because you do go through the whole evidence collection, and it's a very emotional journey for your client. And the downside is huge. They could be deported and back to violence and all kinds of other things. So there's a lot on the line. Many of them have psychological scars and physical issues that have to be dealt with. That ability to actually prove the point is very important. My second comment is around writing articles that nobody reads. I can tell you a lot of articles you actually write for yourself, because it actually helps you to form the thought. It's not about number of readers, it's a size of impact. And sometimes the biggest person you have to impact is actually yourself. Nothing wrong with a few audience, members, and absolutely that could set you on the journey you are today. So let's talk about AI. Let's talk about risks and benefits. You've been clearly thinking about AI before it was cool. There's this massive promise of impact and easier, more fun jobs. There's also a massive fear. What if it hallucinates?
AI is just such a huge term, and it just encompasses so many different technology products. I think it can be like so overwhelming for lawyers. We're now just, everyone's being told like, use AI. And they're like, but how? Like, what do I do with it?
I usually say, Jackie, everyone comes to me and they're like, we want some AI. And I'm like,
just give me some.
and I call it, I want some problem. They want some, or they don't want some. But there is really actually very few. What do we use it for? How do we actionably make it better? And take care of downside.
We're so busy that as lawyers that unless somebody is really showing us exactly how it's going to help, it's just nobody has time to just dream and brainstorm and chat with a robot for it's just not a high priority. So I do think that what lawyers need to be doing is just at this point seeking to understand what workflows can AI help with, which products are secure and have passed those requirements. One example is Clearbrief. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified. So we've passed the strictest security requirements and which products are specifically geared towards lawyers and designed for lawyers. So I think just starting there is going to really help you narrow down your focus right away in understanding AI. And
So
then
let me unpack that because I do want to like you just threw three things. They're highly useful things, but they for someone who's not a builder, they actually may be lost in translation. When you say work, you have to take a look because most lawyers do not think of themselves as like dealing with workflows. Right? They think through the matters they need to go through, emails they need to answer, briefs they need to write, clients they need to help. When you tell a lawyer to, hey, reflect on workflows you need help with, tell me how pick a persona, big law, small law, government, in-house. What does it mean? Like, how do you actually figure out what most people don't get up in the morning and say, I need help with workflows. That is just not a thing. How do you figure out what workflows you need help with?
Let me give you an example. When I first get assigned a case as a litigator, I usually want to just quickly understand what happened when, who are the key players. So I'll usually spend at least a day, often like a few days, going through the evidence and creating a timeline. And I'll make notes throughout of which documents support the timeline. So Clearbrief, I'll share my screen here and just show you what I mean as I talk through it. Clearbrief is designed to actually help you with this workflow of creating a timeline here. You would upload, for example, your factual record, and you can do that right in Clearbrief. We also integrate, as I mentioned, with relativity and your case management system. And then you can go to our hyperlinked timeline, and Clearbrief will go through those uploaded documents and literally in a few seconds give you something that you can actually use to share with the client. And it's all happening in Word where you're already taking your notes. I just click in here. And as you can see, boom, Clearbrief extracted all the dates for me, added a, description. But this is the important part with AI that I want to point out. It's actually displaying for you exactly where Clearbrief got this information. So here's like the date, January 14th. I don't know how well you can see this, but it says it right here, January 14th. John underwent left total knee arthroplasty. And now I can see exactly where the summary came from if I wanted to edit this or put like, ask about this at Depo. I can have my notes right here. That's just one example of how our AI is helping with workflows. But you have to really understand what kind of work lawyers do routinely to figure out where does it make sense to use AI to save time. For example, I think people got excited about ChatGPT at the beginning and they were like, it can write the whole brief for me and it can do my legal research. And then, of course, as we know, hopefully folks heard about this. I feel like they've heard about it on the moon at this point. But several lawyers, this happened more than once at this point, they used ChatGPT and to do legal research, and it hallucinated and created like fake cases and described things that weren't true. And they filed that with the court and got caught doing that and were humiliated. That's not the right tool. ChatGPT is not the right tool to do legal research and that sort of thing. There are other AI tools for doing that that are helpful. It's just you have to really be thoughtful about what workflow am I trying to solve? Can AI really help me with that specific thing? AI is good at some tasks and not so good at others. The way that I've really approached building Clearbrief is that let's focus on the things that AI is great at, such as searching through documents, such as bringing the documents to my fingertips while I'm writing, finding language that is similar, conceptually similar, but not an exact match, so that I could maybe see suggestions for different evidence that could prove my point. That's really our philosophy around how to make AI useful in a workflow.
Love it. Since we're talking about hallucinations, this has been a subject for a little while. Jackie had a good question about links to sources. How important are they? It is definitely a challenge. You don't want to cite to cases that don't exist. That's a big no-no. I don't think I need to emphasize it big enough because I think we all members of the bar understand this challenge. But practically speaking, in a tool like Clearbrief, how do you make sure that the stuff is real, that you can double check, that you don't have to close this application, then go to another application? How do you do it quickly at scale, efficiently, all of that?
This is definitely what Clearbrief was designed for, because this problem has been around since the beginning of time for litigators, which is you never believe what opposing counsel says a case stands for. You never believe what they say about anything, right? Our AI, see this analyze button? This is what I just ran. It will analyze whatever Word doc you have open. This is my own draft, let's say, and it will automatically detect any law that's mentioned in the document. And if it's a case, it will pull up the case. We have a partnership with Fastcase, and it will display this for you. It will also give it a score that is actually reading what I wrote. This court reviews de novo challenges for dismissal to failure state of claim. And then it finds similar text in the document. And so it's helping you see, did I accurately describe what the case said? So the AI is helping in a few different ways. It's confirming this is a real case, and I didn't have to upload the case. I didn't have to do any extra effort. Any reference to a law, we just pull it up automatically here. So that's part of our AI, is that we hold several patents actually on our ability to do what's called parsing a document. If you want to sound like super techie, like to an AI person, you talk about parsing. It's figuring out which text is a citation. And so, for example, we have a feature here. If I, let's see, go back to my matter, I can convert my opponent's document. So if I have their PDF, I've done this with a chat GPT document. I'll save us some time right now, but essentially I can drag in the PDF, and it will automatically convert it to a Word doc, pull up all the cases, right? It parses it, it analyzes it. And if it's a fake case, it will flag this for you and say, we couldn't find this case. And that's really helpful for just at a glance being able to make sure that you didn't write anything that has a fake case in it, or a case that you've really messed up the citation to the point that Clearbrief can't even tell this is a real case. Both are problems. And it allows you to check your opponent's writing so that you can call it out if they're citing to something made up. So that's also a reason why we have judges that are using Clearbrief, because they're worried about people filing documents. There's such a high volume of cases that they're dealing with every day. The clerks are overwhelmed. The judges are overwhelmed with that concern that they may not have time to cite check every single case if it's not automatic like this.
Love it. I think Jerry had a similar question that I have. I'll put his question on the board so you can read it. I'll articulate my question maybe slightly differently. It sounds like what you have in the product is both sort of a combination of extractive AI, which is what we have been doing for a while in e-discovery, CLM, matter management, and all kinds of other stuff, and maybe supplemented with what's happening with LLMs such as ChatGPT or other models. He had a more techy way of asking that question. I prefer to keep this accessible to the general legal audience, so I'm gonna use human language here, but I'll let you respond to both questions because I think it will address both.
So that feature that I showed you of instantly generating the timeline, that's an example of using large language models, generative AI. Our other search features, and we have a lot of really cool, basically features that allow you to. We won litigation product of the year, for example, at Legal Week for our patented add facts cite button, where I can select any text in my sentence, and Clearbrief will suggest conceptually relevant pages from across all of my documents. And so we're using different models basically for different tasks that Clearbrief does for you. But yeah, specifically calling out, that's really, I think, the easiest one to understand is that generative feature with the instant hyperlink timeline. For that, we do use Microsoft Azure's OpenAI instance there, which they have assured the legal community that it is absolutely secure. It's used now by a number of leading AI legal tech products. But we are really conscious of the fact that not all law firms are comfortable with generative AI. So that feature, for example, is something that Clearbrief customers need to opt into. All of our other features, you don't need to opt in because we're using models that we're working with sort of in-house at Clearbrief. And that one feature does use that external Microsoft connection there. For those who are interested, I'm happy to chat more about that.
I love that. From my perspective, as a user, it doesn't matter what's under the hood of your car. What matters is that you can get from point A to point B in style with the wind blowing your hair and listening to a loud music. Basically, that's how I like to ride my cars. However you like to ride your car, it's all good too. But all of that, it matters is that the experience, the result is good. How, if I have to actually pull over and figure out, is my engine on fire or how it works, if it's this and that, I think it pretty much tells you right there that you don't have a good experience, because I can tell you that doing that is not part of my definition of excellent life. And so that's the way I look at the car. That's the way I look at legal products. I need to delight and give you an experience that meets your expectations. You mentioned two more things. You mentioned security and you mentioned product design for lawyers. I'll take them part one by one because I think both are important, because security is something that is very important to lawyers. We are inherently dealing with a lot of confidential documents. If you're linking to e-discovery stuff, there's a lot of stuff there that may be confidential. And frankly, things are confidential until they're filed, even when it comes to pleadings, because they're part of your strategy. Security is important. You mentioned SOC 2 and other things. But I guess if you are a lawyer worried about security and maybe related stepsister privacy, other than asking for certifications, how do you get comfortable? What are 3 things you need to do to sleep well, to make sure that you're meeting your bar required obligations and duties to your client?
So I would say you definitely do your research about the vendor and the company, because I'm a lawyer. And when I started the company, it takes time, essentially, is I think probably the biggest thing to think about. If a company just sprang up overnight, it's doubtful that they've put in the infrastructure that's necessary to support the levels of strict confidentiality and security that are going to be needed for a law firm user or a lawyer user. For example, from the earliest days of Clearbrief, when most startups tell you, the startup studios and VCs are like, just move fast and break things. I was like, no, we're gonna build
Yeah,
a
it
very
doesn't work in law. It really doesn't work. Like breaking things in law, like the word break in law should be maybe used in comedy. But that's and it sounds really cute and adorable. But when you practice breaking law, yeah, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. And really, it takes a lot of capital, though, too, as well, honestly, to get the infrastructure to where it needs to be. It takes know-how and experience. Our chief technology officer, Jose Saura, he was at Microsoft for 20 plus years, leading engineering teams, building AI. He made sure that from the earliest days, Clearbrief had an architecture that was secure, that could scale. And then we had to go through the SOC 2, that's the security review process where you're audited. So the type
And
2
as
audit.
a startup going through that, it's a root canal amplifier.
So much work when you're like trying to build and scale and grow, but it's worth it if you're a legal technology company. And what I can say is that another thing that lawyers can do is ask for examples of other firms that are using it. Like I said, we're used by hundreds of firms. We're used by the largest global multinational law firms. So we passed their security review, which is also like a root canal. No offense, customers.
We've been selling to in-house Fortune 500, and that when I describe a root canal, which I never had, I can't say it's a joy that I would want to repeat only, other than I'd like to serve everyone, including big companies with tight security. But yes, it is definitely an adventure.
It is a painful experience. So the fact that we've done that, the fact that we're also used by courts, we've gone through that level of security, government agencies, that really helps our customers have a comfort level and understanding that we are taking our responsibility incredibly seriously to keep the data secure, to ensure privacy controls, all of that. So the other thing is just make sure that understand how the product works, what it if it's really going to solve a big problem for you, because putting your client documents into a system, you want to make sure that this is really moving the needle for you. It's one of the things that I think about as a founder, that I started out with a company to solve really hard problems, which are around how do we do our most important, vital work as lawyers, which I think our highest and best use of our legal skills as litigators is like the writing, the analysis, the preparation for depositions, and that sort of thing. You need access to do those tasks. You need access to those client documents. So I think some firms get caught in the trap of like, I'll use technology for these other things, but they don't really move the needle for making your practice modern and more efficient. So you're like, oh, I'll use it for timekeeping or something. And yes, that's helpful, but you're going to be competing against lawyers and law firms that are using AI for the substance of their work. And they're going to win. They're going to find that needle in the haystack. They're going to tell that story visually for the judge in the brief. And you're going to start losing and you're not going to really understand why. So I think just understanding that there is going to be, yes, a level of access needed to client documents in order for AI to be truly valuable. Don't be scared of that. Just do your homework to make sure that you're doing it responsibly. But that is ultimately what your clients want. They want to win.
Timekeeping is definitely tied to revenue and therefore important, at least given today's business models of law. However, that is a side effect of what your client is paying you for, and that's actually important to focus on that for many reasons, including because it's the right thing to do. I love that. You mentioned the product design for lawyers, and I'm just curious, kind of, what do you mean by that? How important is that? And then how do you ascertain that actually has happened?
For example, ChatGPT was not designed for lawyers, and so there were pretty actually somewhat explicit warnings that people didn't listen to, that were like, don't rely on anything in this. This is not supposed to be used for anything like serious. And it didn't have access to the source information of necessarily of being able to show the law and display the law and that sort of thing. When people tried to use it for legal research, because it seemed like the output was a nicely written piece of writing that summarized a law or a state's precedent on a certain issue, they got screwed. And so just understanding that there right now, there's so many different companies that are starting up that are AI for this, AI for that, summarize my PDFs. They're just essentially using technology that at this point any entrepreneur can get access to large language models and builds a very thin layer on top of it. It doesn't mean that they've put the time and effort into thinking through, what do lawyers need in order to trust this? What sources do they need in order to make this verifiable? There's just a lot that goes into serving lawyers. And then also just there's terminology that we use as lawyers that are going to make the product easier to use. If you're, for example, in Clearbrief, we call the folders matter folders because that's what lawyers call them. That's what our case management systems call them. And so you'll know, oh, okay, this is my matter folder. This is where I'm putting my documents, versus if it's just called something else, maybe you'd get confused. So that's the user experience angle as well, that really focusing and honing in on what a lawyer is trying to do means that the product itself is going to be more accessible for that lawyer or that paralegal or judge.
Coming to the end, I have a few questions. You mentioned government agencies and judges a few times. I specifically have had a number of conversations with judges who privately reach out both state and federal level, trying to make sense of all the stuff that is happening, whether they need to be adjusting their workflows. They don't quite use those words, but I think that's what they basically mean. I'm just curious, and you say you have clients in courts and government agencies as part of the reasons you went through very tight security. Let's focus on decision making. because those folks in government and judiciary in the United States and other countries are often engaged with you to either make decisions or to make you things a certain way. How have you seen AI influence the process of judges and courts and government authorities to pursue cases, to resolve cases, to make decisions? Because there's a whole spectrum of involvement you may have with the essentially government agency.
One of the things that we've heard directly from judges that use our platform is our fact-finding features are so helpful to them, because when they are writing an opinion or an order, and we work with judges at the trial court, the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, like all levels, and their clerks, the hardest thing for them is they need to just try to get a handle on the facts of what happened and make sure that if you're in the trial court, you want your order and your opinion to be really well supported by the evidence, because that ensures you won't get overturned right on appeal. But there's often there's days and days of hearing transcripts, and so you can't quite remember where things were.
You've been through days of transcripts. You can't just quite remember a lot of things, not just where they were, but actually what exactly
happened.
I've been through days of transcripts. And let me tell you, I have a very good attention span to detail, and I can sit there still for days. And even I'm like, did that happen or did I dream about it?
The way that the judges use it, which is also similar, by the way, to how lawyers use it when they write their briefs. I'm sharing my screen here, and they can write from memory what they want to put in their order. And then they can select any text and click this Add Fact Cite button. And Clearbrief will go through and find them where in the briefs, where in the hearing transcripts did it talk about, this is like about hugging, right? The governor hugged her. And it reminds them of the evidence. And they can make sure that whether or not they actually even include the citations to the evidence in their order, some don't. They want to be able to see, you've hugged her? Yes, many times. They want to be able to remember where they said this in the record. They can also use this is like a Google for the facts, where you could, I remember one of the witnesses talked about a birthday party. Clearbrief will find you and ranks it in the order that seems most helpful here. Oh, here's the birthday party. And then it starts to get less relevant. This was where they talked about a birthday. It will find things related to a holiday party, other types of parties. And you can also use this is a new feature where you can ask a question like, when did he hug her? And it will actually give you the answer. And like December 2000, and it shows you exactly the document where this answer came from. He told us about an incident in December 2000 when the governor embraced her in a hotel room in a way that felt overly close and intimate. So the AI is actually figuring out that even though this doesn't specifically talk about hugging, embraced her in a hotel room, that happened in December 2000. So I can also look at regularly. Here's a discussion of the governor testified that he did regularly hug her. So this will help you while you're writing, make sure that you got the facts right, because that is your duty as the judge. That is what your whole opinion will turn on. And they are just drowning in documents and evidence. So it is really such an honor. And I'm like every day fangirling that we get to help judges. I love that so much, because I feel like that's really a way that we're having an impact in the justice system, even as a small startup.
The observation that judiciary is actively asking and training around AI is very satisfying. And it is a very useful tool with really any case, especially that has testimonies and let alone case law, but actually going through all that stuff. That's a lot of stuff, because if you ever depose somebody or ask them on the stand, people say all kinds of things for a long time. Sometimes it takes them a long time to get to the point. So it's very helpful. We're coming to the end. I have two questions. One is that I'm so excited that we had this conversation. A fangirl over here. Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm going to ask you to take a crystal ball and paint me the future of law, the way you see it from your seat as a builder, as somebody who interacts with the plaintiff side, defense side, the government side, the judiciary side, the whole 9 yards. Like, tell me, I don't know, in a minute or less, what is the bright future of law is? No pressure. Sorry,
Yes.
no pressure. Sorry,
Okay,
no,
so
sorry.
my lens that I look at everything, it goes back to that story that I told about the asylum hearing. I think we need to make the evidence visible at every stage of the process, and that will solve so many problems because the status quo right now for our justice system, the average situation is that the documents are hard to access, even for the people working on the case. They have some in their e-discovery system, some in their email, some in their case management system, some on their desktop. And even when you're writing something, you're spending just so much time trying to find that document to prove it. And then all along the way, everyone else who interacts with that document gets a piece of paper. And you're like trying to make sense of it. And you have to go manually look up every single source and recreate the wheel of that, all of that work. That's just not an efficient way to run our justice system. And so my vision is still very clear that I want these sources to be visible to everyone, including the opinions. I think that the judicial opinions need to make it easier for the public to understand their work. And so I think AI can help with those problems. Let me just share one last thing on my screen here, which is the last step of using Clearbrief is that it creates a fully hyperlinked version of your pleading that you can file with the court as a PDF that's hyperlinked. And it takes the judge, it takes your opposing counsel, it takes your client to this exact experience where anything that you want to cite to here, including, this is just an example I have up, but this is a factual document that's being cited here. They could see the source. If you're talking about the scene of the crime, you could show them the scene of the crime while they read. And that I think will lead to nirvana. No, I think that will
Wow,
lead to
Nirvana. Okay, I'm ready. I'm totally ready for that.
a better justice system, because I think the problems that we encounter with bias, with opinions where we feel like this is so far from reality, like what the court ruled here, and they're citing to things that we can't access, we can't see. A law review article that was published in 1905 or something, like we need that.
Read by two
We need
people.
sunlight. Yeah, like we need sunlight on the arguments and the evidence behind our work. So I think AI is really powerful to help us make that easier, because look, the work we do is complicated. It isn't easy to like display all those different sources and make it simple and make it accessible. But if we can do that, I think it will lead to more efficient lifestyles for the legal teams and the judges and everybody. And it will lead to better outcomes because we're all working from the same evidence.
You had me at legal nirvana. Drop for me is I personally really, I'm going to reflect from my takeaways to reflect on this transparency of court decision concept. I think that's a very powerful concept. The fact that it's not just carries weight because judge said so, which is basically how it works today. And we are essentially trained to say that this is the final word and we respect it. But that it is actually verifiable. And it's not a black box. It's a kind of more of a fishbowl. You can actually go and take a look at the evidence or case law. That's actually really powerful and very much consistent with trajectory of making government agencies transparent and not corrupt and all of those things. So beautiful things that make democracy work and the rule of law, an amazing concept. We covered a lot of ground. What is one takeaway?
I hope that this showed that AI is not this totally inscrutable, this vague concept that most people, I think lawyers look at it and think, I'm too busy to deal with this right now. Wake me when it becomes relevant. It is relevant to you now. And any concerns that you have around, is it going to hallucinate? Is it going to make up stuff? Can I check it over easily? Those problems are solvable. And for example, Clearbrief, we are focused on that exact problem and solving that and making sure that AI is verifiable, that you can always see the source where it got the information, that it's explaining even on the page level with that highlighting, where on that page does it talk about this, so that AI becomes something that's really useful for you. And don't delay in trying it out and testing it and experimenting with it, because this is really a major sea change for the legal profession. And we can't have our best lawyers sitting on the sidelines, not engaging and trying it. we need you in the fray, in the arena.
I love that if we are smart enough to identify that we have a problem, we may be smart enough to actually solve it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this discussion. See you next time. Bye, everyone.
And that brings us to the end of another thrilling episode on the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. We had a fantastic time exploring the fascinating intersection of law and AI with you. But hold on tight, because the adventure doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us on social media to continue the conversation, share your thoughts, and be part of our incredible community of legal enthusiasts. Together, we can inspire, learn, and make a real impact on the world of law and AI. If you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who could benefit from the exciting insights we discussed. Let's spread the knowledge and enthusiasm far and wide.